Morning. Cool. Well, good morning, you guys. Thanks for joining. I did see the well, through GitLab comments, I saw the work, and Adam, I know I haven't really seen this type of work before, but really impressed with the quality and thoughtfulness of the results. So thank you. This is really great.
Great.
I know there's kind of like kind of 6 general issues you brought up in your analysis. Sam, how do these meetings normally go? Do you want to just kind of go through the topics, or how would you suggest we best do this?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, what we're trying to get to is a decision on, do we continue to, build on what we've got today with Klar and Klar and, get it to run as a non-root user and clean up some of the documentation around it and, make this the thing that we really build our foundation on going forward. And, or do we swap it out for Trivy? And, there's not necessarily a right or a wrong answer, but we do want to come to a decision and have some justification for that decision, right? So I don't know that we'll come to a hard answer there today, but I think we should at least come out of this with, some idea of where we're headed, especially since, we need to make a decision fairly soon.
Yeah, I'd love to understand. So if I could suggest a format, maybe Adam can give us a quick summary of each of the items he posted. And for each item, I'd love to understand whether we think that's essential to fix or a good to have or not needed at all. Because then with that information, engineering can take that back and say, all right, here are the estimates to addressing these things. And then if we want to, we can get into details of how to address them. Would that work? Would that answer everyone's questions and work for everyone?
I think that would be great.
Sure, I can start doing that.
Not to put you on this, not to put her in the spot, but I did.
No, I figured that I was going to have to go through each of these probably, so that's no problem. First off, I want to say that, now that I've had a good chance to look into Trivy, it's pretty impressive. And I think if I could have gone back, and we didn't know about Trivy when we first created the container scanning tool. If we did, we probably would have implemented it in Trivy. It seems to be a lot more powerful and full featured than the Klar kind of combination. And it seems to also be a lot easier with respect to, the dependencies. You don't need, like with the whole container scanning tool that we currently have, we have so many different moving parts. You've got Klar and you've got Klar, and that in itself is, and you've also got the vulnerability database, and that's a real pain, all those 3 different things going on. So actually yesterday I spent a part of the day trying to swap out Klar and Klar from the container scanning tool and switch it to Trivy just to see what it was like. And it's amazing how much code it cleans up, because of course, all of this stuff of starting the Klar server is gone. I mean, I didn't write about this stuff because this was something I did like late yesterday. I finished it late, so I didn't have time to put it into the this issue, but I will write about that today. But yeah, it removes a lot of logic and code and set up, bootstrapping type of code from the Klar code base, from the container scanning code base. So it's a lot easier to implement. It would have saved us a lot of time because there was a lot of stuff that we had to do when building a container scanning tool just to get the Klar server to start up, make sure it's running, print the log messages from the Klar server, do it asynchronously. Like that was a lot of work actually. So yeah, using Trivy from the get-go would have been a lot easier. The vulnerability database stuff, that as well, because right now we're relying on a third party for that information, and apparently it was not being updated for 2 months, which is a long time for viruses, for vulnerabilities not to be updated, and also for us not to even know that these vulnerabilities weren't being updated, because that was something that I think just came up in the past month or two, that this was happening. And
yeah, just a comment for those who are not across that. So I think Mike raised it, and what happens is, our process to update it is working. It runs daily, and yay, we got an up-to-date vulnerability database. But the upstream that we consume had been stale for a while, and we didn't notice. We didn't have a list for that. So we're addressing that separately. But it's a good point that Adam brought up.
Yeah, so that is taken care of pretty easily with Trivy. They've got their own, it's like a Git repo where they submit the vulnerabilities to, which is the same thing that we've done with Gymnasium, having our vulnerabilities in a Git repo. So yeah, that part is easier. There's a whole bunch of, there's also got a templating language, which I thought was super cool. The log output is much better. The table output is really, really clean. So there's a lot of stuff that Trivy does better than, in my opinion, than Klar and Klar. So from that point of view, like I said, if I could do it again, I would have done this with Trivy. But now that we are, thinking of switching out, well, there's two things. We're thinking of switching out Trivy, Klar and Klar for Trivy, and switching out possibly Go for Ruby. So the first thing, I guess, we'll talk about some of the things. We'll start off with the log messages. And this is one that, you could pass by and say, oh, it's not a big deal. The log messages are good that come from Trivy. But the problem is we've had a lot of the log messages that we've built into the current container scanning tool have come from bug reports. So a customer didn't understand some feature, so we have improved the log message so that it explains what's happening. Like the first one here is, if we try to scan an image from a secure registry without configuring the certificate, then we have this error from Trivy that explains that kind of in a roundabout way that it's something to do with the certificate. But if you do the same thing with Klar, it says explicitly the SSL certificate used by the registry is bad or signed by an unknown authority. Please either set the it tells you exactly what to do. It tells you where in the documentation you should look to fix this. So that I think that would be a real, it would be really unfortunate if we were to miss out on those types of things. So I think it is important to maintain those log messages. The other thing, and there's a bunch of those in that we currently have. So that's something I would really recommend re-implementing in Trivy. The next thing is the message format. The message format that's printed is straight from Trivy, and it doesn't follow any of our logging formats that we use for all the other secure analyzers. Since we use, there's a thing called the common package, and that is made available to all Go-based code. So all of our Go-based analyzers can import this package, and it will give them a consistent logging interface. So if you look at this one, so in log messages, I'll just paste this. I guess it doesn't, when you save these chats, Tiago, these videos, does it save the chat transcript? I'm not sure.
It does, but you have to upload it. I'll have the chat transcript, but I guess okay. I can paste them in the video description.
Yeah, in any case, you're scrolling down on this window. So I'm looking at number 2 here. Yeah, so log message format and color should follow the standard format. So you can see the one above in is what Trivy outputs, which is its own internal logging format. And the one below that is what Klar outputs, which is the consistent and standardized secure analyzer logging format. So you could just let Trivy output this stuff. My preference is to be consistent. It's a nicer UI when a GitLab user has the same the same output across the board on all of our scanners. So I think that's a huge thing.
So yeah, go on, Sam. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, it seems like both of those would be, if we're bucketing these into must-haves and nice-to-haves, those would probably be nice-to-haves.
Yeah, to give a bit of context what I said, so to me the required is, hey, without this it'll break, it won't work. Nice to have that it'll work, but some things might be worse. And then things that we don't want could be the third one. I'm in doubt about the first one being a nice to have, because from reading that message, I don't know, Adam, maybe you read a bit more than that. There's an X509 reference there. So that's a hint to what's happening.
Yeah, it's not bad. But
Yeah.
the thing is, like I said, we were having these error messages printed out that way in Klar, and customers still had no clue what was going on.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
we could estimate how difficult it would be to import these log messages. I'm guessing wouldn't be that much work.
it's not difficult. We already have the code in the container scanning tool. The only difference is that we have to look for this particular error. If it contains, like X509, like that string, then we spit out our own custom message.
Cool.
So it's not difficult to do, but yeah, definitely nice to have. I see the downside of spitting out the messages like this is that you're probably going to get more bug reports for things that have already been solved.
For sure.
Okay.
And at least
next.
number one, when we do fix it, we probably want to contribute that upstream, or at least consider contributing upstream. If the log messages are just bad, then
We
it's better.
just can't put GitLab links upstream, right? To the
Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
There's certain
but
things we
I
could
agree
do.
with that as well.
We could say like exactly that the SSL certificate was bad or signed by an unknown authority. That would probably be really helpful to commit upstream. Okay, moving on. The next one. This is bigger. This is the CI job log output. So you can click that link there, or maybe it's yeah.
Right.
No,
one.
close that one. I was going to
Would
say
it be easier for you to share? Would that be preferable?
it kind of, but not really. The problem is that my screens they're in portrait mode.
Okay.
So it's going to look terrible on this video and everyone's going to struggle to see it. So it's kind of better if someone else does it.
Okay.
You can close that window.
Okay.
Yeah. And click on the link where it says table format. That's it. Maybe collapse the sidebar on the left bottom so it looks a little bit better. Anyway, so that's the output that we currently get with the current container scanning tool, this nice table. So Trivy can also output a table, and it looks really good, the table that it outputs. The problem is that there's no way to, Trivy will either output a text file, like with the JSON of the vulnerabilities, or it'll output the table. So you can't get it to do both. So that means that in order to solve this, you either need to run Trivy twice, or you need to run it once and then ingest that JSON file and use the logic to manipulate it and spit out a table. So there are some considerations there. Efficiency.
It could be an upstream contribution, right, Adam? Just to allow both flags to be passed, and then you do both.
It could be, and that's what there is an outstanding issue for that right now. Yeah, that could definitely be two flags because you would implement it the way I said. You would pretty much generate the report, and then you'd convert that report into the pass it to the table writing output. That's definitely more difficult because I've actually, since putting Trivy into the current container scanning tool, we just get this for free. It just works. So that's one thing that we don't have to worry about. That's a difference between switching from Go and Ruby. If we do this in Ruby, we need to solve this. We need to either run Trivy twice, which is an efficiency, both time consuming and also wasting resources because you got to wait for 2 scans. And if a scan, they do cache the information apparently, but in that same issue that I linked, where only one output format can be specified at a time, one of the people that you can go to that actually if you want, if you click back to the issue.
Adam, do you know if any other analyzers print a table like that, or is this container scanning specific?
It was printed. Oh, that, yeah, I think a bunch, the dependency scanning does as well, because we have some issues to fix the table output of dependency scanning. So yes, it's different analyzers. Yeah, so if you click on go to the next tab. Sorry to cut you off. Were you going to say something else, Thiago?
No, I was going to ask Sam whether he falls into the required or nice to have.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about that as we talk about it. And I'm almost leaning towards this. At first, my first instinct was this is a must-have because, you know, we're impacting the usability of it in a pretty significant way. But as I think about it, so right now, container scanning is only available for Gold and Ultimate, which means that they have access to the vulnerability dashboard to view these on. It would be different if it was like SAST, where SAST is available down to core, so they rely on this log output to see the vulnerabilities. So I think we can consider this one a nice to have, but only because right now container scanning is only in Gold and Ultimate.
When I first implemented container scanning and we deviated from the previous table output, I'm pretty sure we had people complaining immediately, you know, that the output was
We
different.
get some pretty heavy noise about that.
Yeah, and I can tell if you take away that table, I think you're going to have a lot of unhappy people.
All right.
Well, I mean, personally, personally from just I run container scanning all the time. I love that output, and I would be really, really unhappy if that output were to go away because it gives a really quick overview. Because you're not remember this. Some people will run this differently as well. They might not run it in the CI environment. They might run it standalone. So if you run this Docker image, you get all this nice output, but as soon as you take that out, you have no output. And it's really nice to see what was approved there. You know, just it's a really quick overview. Like I said, for me, I would be the first person complaining, but it's
yeah. If we've got that past evidence that customers rely on it, then you've persuaded me, Adam. Let's mark this as a must-have.
Click on the next tab over the multiple report options. So this is where someone was, complaining about that, saying, can we get it to output twice? Can we get it to do 2 different formats at once? And then this is the person at the very bottom where they said after implementing because one person responded and said that the scan results are cached and the second scan will skip downloading layers, so it should be fast enough. But then this person responded and said that their scan took 30 minutes rather than 20. So it seems that it is not so cut and dry, that there is an efficiency issue there. So because of that, yeah, I think we would have to implement it ourselves. But like I said, if we stick with Go, it's already done. That logic is there. I tried it yesterday, and it prints out a table exactly as we have.
Good to know.
Yeah,
I reckon the Go versus Ruby is more of an engineering decision. Of course, it depends on the estimates to doing that conversion, things like this. Yeah, but we can probably save that discussion for.
Yeah, but you know there is a lot of stuff related to this, like the log messages, all of the stuff.
I know the common
because
yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the next one, the air-gapped instance. So this one, yeah, we're gonna have to expose the skip update flag on Trivy because Trivy, I guess, the way it works for us is that. Sorry, one sec. I just want to. Yeah, are we going to this next meeting, Tiago, or are we going to skip it? Because this is going to take longer.
I'm happy to skip it. We already missed the secure staff meeting, so. Okay.
So the way that the current the image that John made, it includes the current vulnerability database from Trivy. So it downloads it and it includes it in the image. But I noticed that I think there must be some code that checks the age of the vulnerability cache. And if it's older than, I don't know how many hours or days, it'll try to refresh it. So we need to expose the skip update flag in order to prevent the database from trying to update. Otherwise, it'll fail in an offline environment.
You suggested something else, which is rebuild the image daily, right?
Well, yeah, but even that wouldn't really fix the problem because say a customer, we rebuild the image daily, which I should update. Yeah. But just for everybody else listening, if we rebuild the image daily, but the customer doesn't download it daily, they download it weekly, then they'll run into this problem.
Which is likely for air-gapped environments.
It seems like you would just want this to not this should be a warning, not an error that causes the scan to fail.
Whatever it is, though, we would need to do both. We would need to, well, we would need to do our own logic to pretty much re-implement what Trivy does on how it checks the age of the database. And we'd have to say, hey, this database is older than 5 hours. It's probably out of date. You should think about updating. But we would have to put this, we pretty much have to run Trivy with the skip update flag all the time to make sure that it doesn't try to update. Well, no, we don't have, sorry.
Would it be fair to say, Adam, if we do this, the skip update, it's pretty much what we have today with Claire and Klar, right? Because
that's
we've been running old updates and nobody noticed.
That's exactly it. Yeah, it's So we would expose it. We would have some skip update option. We actually no, we wouldn't enforce it by default. We would have, the customer would have to run into this issue, or we'd have to say in an offline environment, you should set this, because we don't know whether they're running in an offline environment or not.
Yeah.
So we expose that, and we could trap that error message. So we could say, if we get that failed to download vulnerability DB, we say, hey, the vulnerability database is out of date, so we should update it.
Yeah, so out of all of those, I like the option of just always passing that flag in by default, and then we
was going to say that
first, right? So we would expose a parameter that says require update, and if they set that to true, then we would take that flag off. But otherwise, that flag would just go on by default.
I had a different mix of that. I think they're all iterations on the same ideas. Like for a first implementation, you can always pass it in so it doesn't break. And then we can look as a next step to add a flag that allows expose the flag so the user can control it, what they want to happen. And then as a third thing, or maybe a second, is implement the warning to say, hey, your database is pretty old. You're probably not catching the latest vulnerabilities.
I think defaulting to not updating the database is definitely, that's the riskiest approach, because I can't really, Klar hasn't had its database updated for 2 months, so we don't really have a lot of credibility there.
Make that mistake again.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's the riskiest approach. Like for me, I would prefer to err on the side of being cautious, because you're going to frustrate some people in an offline environment, but they're probably going to go through this. People that are not in an offline environment want this behavior.
Yeah, I'm talking as a follow-up, right? Like the very first release, if it's locked down to not update, I mean, we know it's update. We're all looking at it and we know it's going to be up to date. And then on the milestone after or the following, we'll put it back in.
Could I ask a question? Would the goal for this minimum viable for anybody to actually use it in a production environment, or would we tell customers that this is a beta that they could try out, but we don't recommend for production? I don't feel like we should default to skip update if we have anybody who is thinking that this would be okay to run in a production environment.
Yeah, I made a suggestion in the comments, which was if we do choose to do this, we identify the gaps that we want to address. We do that as part of 13.10, which means that will be available as of 13.10. It will be available in 13.10 and 13.11, and then on 14 we'll switch to the new one. So we'll get some alpha beta testing out of it before we make the switch, and that could give us time to actually put the warnings and remove the hard code. Just a suggestion.
So we can tell people, if you're using Claire, keep using it, and kind of when this will be ready, or just sharing the information. Yeah.
I don't know how it would work, because you have to include a template, and I don't know if you can do feature flags in templates. It might complicate things, but we can take that offline.
So yeah, I guess we can discuss this later, because it seems like there's a lot more nuances to whether you enable it by default or not. We don't have to solve that now. The next thing is that, as far as point number 3, so go back to the running container scanning. Yeah, so point number 3, if we build a new container, so this is more of like we need to figure out what we're going to do in this case. If we build a new container scanning image every day, we'll always have the latest Trivy vulnerabilities database update available. But do we need to, version these images differently? Like right now, for example, we'd have like, container scanning 3.0.1. Do we do like 3.0.1-1, 3.0.1-2 to show that it's the same thing, but it's like a new, or do we just print out the version of the database, the date when it was last updated? Another thing we'll have to, figure out.
Yeah.
I think there should be something to indicate that this is, so they know they're not stale.
Well, I have opinions there, but I think it's sort of in the weeds. We should probably.
Yeah. Next thing is that scanning an image on a secure registry by setting the additional CA cert bundle doesn't seem to work. I didn't look into this in detail. I just tried it with the exact same setup that we currently have. It works with Klar. It doesn't work with the current tool. I'm not sure why that is. I just it could be something.
It's definitely
simple.
a required one.
That's definitely a required one. Yeah. Okay. Any discussion there or?
No, I'm conscious of time. I don't know if Sam and Karen can stay longer, so try to nail as much as we can on.
Yeah, I've got to wrap up here soon, but
let's see if we can get another entry there.
Okay, the differences in the report, Jason. So the big one is that the vulnerability IDs in the report are different between Trivy and Klar. I think this is just a case of the way that John is ingesting the identifier values. I think if he were to change the way that he manipulates them before generating the report, it would be fine. But we do need to keep that in mind, and they should be the same, because if they're different, then you have the situation where you've run your vulnerability reports, you've dismissed all of these vulnerabilities, in the UI, yet they're coming back now when you switch to Trivy. So that is a must-have.
So I mean, we are doing this potentially as a breaking change for 14.0. So if it's not a hard must-have, but it's a really strong nice to have, right?
I would say it's pretty easy to implement this, so it would be a shame not to. Yeah.
Then let's do it.
Yeah. The remediations aren't supported. I'm not sure why. Apparently they should be, but I didn't look too deeply into why that's not working. And then there's a bunch of differences, like this is something, the severity levels between Klar and Trivy seem to be different. That I guess is just something we'll have to deal with. It's probably a good thing, maybe the database is different. I didn't look in too deeply why that's happening. And then the vulnerability list is different between Trivy and Klar. There's a bunch of, I outlined all of the different areas of the JSON report where, like there's a URL in the, I think that's just, some of it is because John just didn't, translate these, these values. But it's just something that I noticed.
The data might be there.
The data is all there. It's just a matter of changing it, massaging it into the format that we want. So, and this is it. The vulnerability CVE, you can see there, it's Alpine. For Klar, it's Alpine 3.7, CVE, blah, blah, blah. And for Trivy, it's only CVE 2019. I think that's why the IDs are being, changed. So if they were to change the CVE value, then it should work fine. So next is general issues.
I think Sam's gonna have to drop off. Do you wanna wrap, Sam?
No, I can give you like 5 more minutes, so you're okay.
Okay, let's go to general issues. The vulnerability names not being reported in some cases. Again, I think it's a data issue as far as we need to convert some stuff. Private repo scanning isn't supported, so that's a bug that needs to be fixed. Because there's a username and password that has to be set, which we do by default with Klar, and the GCS version doesn't do that. It's an easy enough update. Another thing is where GCS saves the report, the container scanning report, it doesn't save it into the CI projector.
Sorry for those following. GCS is the Trivy implementation.
Yeah, there's 2 things, and I use them interchangeably. There's GCS and there's GTCS. I'm not really sure why the name was changed in the Docker image, but I guess think of them interchangeably. or maybe GCS is the actual project. GTCS is the tool used to, scan. And then vulnerability allow listing is not supported. And that's something that we do have currently implemented in the container scanning tool. So next is what needs to change. So scroll down a bit further. What needs to change in the container scanning tool template to use GCS. I've created a branch that implements the changes. It's pretty much just removing the reliance on starting up. It removes the reliance on, I think, starting up Klar as another, the Klar DB is another service. It's a lot of, small, good changes because it removes, it simplifies the template file. And
can I come back quickly to the previous point with the vulnerability allow listing? That's something that's already available in Golang, right? That would be just a drop-in replacement.
That's it's already it's already done in the Go version. So if we stick with Go, then we have the allow listing. Again, it's not something that's super difficult to do in Ruby, but it's just another thing. That's,
but this could also be an iteration, right? It sounds like Ruby? Yeah, like the first iteration is going Trivy in Golang, and then if the team decides that Ruby is much more appropriate for this engineering team, it'll allow more people to work on it. The tests are probably I think have some improvements as well. So anyway, as I said, it's an engineering discussion.
Yeah. The other thing, so we have do all non-Klar specific settings work? And no, we've already discussed a bunch of things that that don't currently work. And then the other stuff like Klar specific settings, there's a Klar output, the severity level threshold, which that's something that we've been meaning to rename in container scanning to something more generic, such as severity level threshold. Again, that would probably be something we'd have to implement that ourselves. And then some other GCS settings that need to be changed, which are just like renaming some variables and adding a registry and secure variable. And then finally, with the last 2 minutes, we have Go versus Ruby. So this is about, if we switch to Ruby, there's a lot of stuff that we lose that is implemented in the common package, such as logging, vulnerability identifier, parsing, struct definitions, vulnerability sorting. This is all stuff that we get for free right now that we'd have to re-implement and retest. And there's also the other considerations, such as needing to run Trivy twice, which we don't need to do if we stick with the Go version. And also because Trivy is also written in Go, we can just take stuff from their code base and stick it into our code base. So for example, the table writing code is pretty good in Trivy. So I would like to just take that and stick it into our container scanning tool. And we can do that pretty easily because we can just take this as it is and the tests and everything else that they have, and we can stick that into our code. But we can't do that with Ruby.
Well, thank you for doing this analysis. This is great information. I think the piece that we still need in PM, going through this, we've identified the must-haves, the nice-to-haves. I think the next step would be to figure out what are we looking at, estimate-wise, and I don't know how long you need, Tiago, to put that together, but how soon do you think we'll be ready to kind of bring this to the team and make a final decision here?
I'm hoping to do it this week. I know I've only got 2 days, and tomorrow is team day actually. So maybe I'm going to need Monday to wrap it up.
Sure.
But I have a call with Jan tonight. I have a call with Mathieu, and I can always reach out to Zamir. I'll do it asynchronously anyway. I'll ask people to watch this video.
Sounds good.
Once we post it. Yeah.
Then
But I should say
we'll make a decision on maybe our next group meeting of Tuesday of next week. It would be what, Wednesday your time?
Yep. Sorry, Adam, you saying something?
No, I just want to say, like, just to John, who's going to watch this video later, like, great work on the GCS tool. It was really easy to use, and and I looked through the Ruby code. You could have done some really great stuff there.
Awesome. So Sam and Karen, my request to PM is just confirm the nice to haves and required ones there. We have an idea, but it'd be good to have it there. And then we'll take that, and for the requireds and nice to haves, I think we need to do 2 estimates. I think it will be helpful to do 2 estimates. One picture looking at, okay, if we put this in the current Golang implementation, this is how much it's going to cost you. And if we decide to stick to GCS, this is how much we're going to cost you. And yeah, that's my suggestion anyway.
Yeah, that
Does that
sounds
work?
great.
Yeah, cool.
Sounds great. I've added comments in the issue as we've gone along, so
Cool.
it'll all be there.
Thank you, Karen, for organizing this.
Yeah, thanks guys. So work's really impressive. Work asynchronously then. So thank you.
No
All right.
problem.
Bye.
All right.
See
See everyone.
Bye.
Bye.